We are at week 11 of the 2019 NFL season, and last week, 5-8 in my picks, an abysmal week. The only good thing about last week was that I correctly predicted the Seahawks to upset the 49ers and give them their first loss of the season. Other than that, there was just nothing good about last week's predictions. But you know what I'm going to say. I'm going to respond. Every time I say I'm going to respond after a bad week, I always do a lot better. Huge responses. And this week is going to be no different. So we begin with Thursday Night Football as always. This week, Thursday Night Football features the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. The Steelers, they are coming back from this season after a really rough 0-3 start. And ever since that, they have won 5 out of their last 6 games. So really the only bad thing the Steelers have done this season, as far as a bad game is concerned, is against the Patriots in week 1. If you look at their record and if you look at the box scores, that's the only bad game you can really see out of the Steelers. They could have beaten the 49ers, but they had many turnovers in that game. They could have beaten Seattle if maybe one or two things went differently, and they could have beaten the Ravens earlier in the season. So we could be looking at the Steelers as potentially a front runner in the AFC with Mason Rudolph at quarterback if the Steelers were just able to finish games. However, despite the Steelers being an underdog on Thursday Night Football against the Browns, I still think the Steelers team is going to win. Despite the Browns winning last week, they still haven't proven anything to me that they're capable of winning 2 games in a row. So I'm going to take the Steelers because they're riding the hot hand right now. And they are fighting to get back into first place in the AFC North. But the problem is the Ravens keep on winning games. So the Steelers need to hope the Ravens slip up at some point in this season. And anything can happen. The Ravens could end up losing 2 games in a row and the Steelers are right back in this. So I'm taking the Steelers this week. Next, we're moving on to the New York Jets and Washington Redskins. And this week is the weekly pick of I have to pick somebody. And I really don't want to pick anybody in this because both teams, they just look abysmal. I mean, the Jets 2 weeks ago, they gave the Dolphins their first win of the season. They just handed the Dolphins a win. And last week, they beat the Giants in the Battle of the New Yorks. While the Redskins, nobody really knows what's going on with Washington anymore. I mean, Haskins is the quarterback at this point, but he's not even ready to be an NFL quarterback yet. And that's just a shame because I think Dwayne Haskins has a lot of talent to be a very excellent NFL quarterback. He just had to get drafted to literally the worst case scenario in the Washington Redskins. But I'm going to pick the Jets because I've at least seen some potential with the Jets this season, at least more than I have with the Redskins. So I'm going to take the Jets to win 2 games in a row, which is a very rare thing to predict, although nobody would have expected the Dolphins to win 2 games in a row. So I'm taking the Jets in this. Next, we've got the Jacksonville Jaguars and Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are on a 2-game losing streak. Just 3 weeks ago, the Colts would have had a first-round bye if the regular season ended 3 weeks ago. And now, the Colts, they're just fighting to stay in this AFC South. Because right now, the Titans are winning some games. The Texans, they're winning some games. So right now, it's panic mode for the Colts because Jacoby Brissett, his condition is unknown for this week. And for the Jaguars, Nick Foles is back. But I'm going to base this pick on I think Jacoby Brissett is going to play this week. So I'm going to pick Indianapolis. But if Brian Hoyer has to be the starting quarterback again this week, then I would pick Jacksonville. But I'm basing this pick off of I think Jacoby Brissett is going to play this week. So I'm taking the Colts in that one. Next, we have the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins, after wanting to, well, their fans wanted the Dolphins to go 0-16. But they have surprisingly won 2 games in a row. Can the Dolphins make it 3 in a row? I still think the Dolphins know what they're doing in the offseason, but I got to give credit to the Dolphins here. I mean, they beat a playoff contender in the Colts last week, despite the Colts having Brian Hoyer. Beating a team like the Colts, especially when you're the Dolphins in the situation you're in, it's a huge confidence booster for the Dolphins moving forward. But now that I've seen these Dolphins win 2 games in a row now, it really makes sense. The Dolphins, in a way, they were rebuilding. This is a time for their future. But they want to win games to appeal to free agents, which lately, a lot of these teams that are making runs to the Super Bowl, the Eagles, the Rams, they've made off-season acquisitions in free agency. And I think that's what the Dolphins are planning to do at this point. They're trying to win as many games as they can and use the draft capital that they have and try to appeal to at least one big free agent in next year's free agency class. But I do think the winning streak stops here. I think Buffalo gets this win. Although last week the Bills offense just really looked pitiful last week. So I could see the Dolphins easily winning this game. In fact, this is one of my at least 3 games this week that are just complete toss-ups. You could argue to the Jets and Redskins are a toss-up as well, but this is the first big toss-up that I have this week. But I'm picking the Bills. This will be a pick that I know that I'm going to look back and just regret it. Because I think the Dolphins, they're going to win some games. They'll win at least, I guarantee the Dolphins win at least 1 more game this season. If they don't win this one. But if they win this one, then they'll probably win 2 more down the line. So the Dolphins will probably finish 5-11 or 6-10. Realistically. But I will take the Bills this week. Next, we have the Cowboys and the Lions. And the Cowboys, they just wasted one of Dak's best performances of his career last week against the Vikings. While the Lions, man, they just need to get back on the winning track right now. Because it's looking like that Monday night disaster against Green Bay is becoming the Lions season breaker. And it's going to continue to break their backs. I am taking the Cowboys in this one. I just think the Cowboys, since the Lions, they're not a playoff contender team at this point, Dallas will win. Because the Cowboys, they do pretty well against teams that aren't in playoff contention whatsoever. So I am taking the Cowboys. Next, what I think is going to be the game of the week. The Houston Texans and the Baltimore Ravens. This is a great quarterback battle we have. We have Deshaun Watson for the Texans and Lamar Jackson, who has my vote for most valuable player in the National Football League, on the Ravens. And the Ravens, I think, they're going to be that sleeper team that we could see in Miami in February. And I'm a little bit conflicted with this game, because I do like what the Ravens have been doing lately. But the Texans, well, I don't know what to think of them. One week, they look like an unbeatable team. The next week, Bill O'Brien is completely screwing up play calling. I'm going with Lamar Jackson because he has the hot hand right now. And he loves pizza, YouTube brackets. So I'm going with the Ravens to get another win. Lamar Jackson, he is going to finally get everyone to put respect on his name if they didn't put respect on him after New England. Lamar Jackson is the GOAT. Well, not necessarily yet, but he eventually will be. At least in my opinion. Because Lamar Jackson, I think, is going to end up being the best quarterback in the draft class of 2018. Better than Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, all of them. Josh Allen. Ravens over the Texans. Next, we have the Atlanta Falcons and the Carolina Panthers, and I feel completely bad for Falcons fans that still have hope in this franchise, because I no longer have any hope for this Falcons franchise. Because one, they've only won 2 games this season, which the Falcons, they were anticipated and had expectations to go at least 10-6, 11-5. Also that, and why do they wait until week 10 to finally start playing? Did it just take a bye week to just light a fire under the Falcons? Is that what it took? I realistically don't think that the Falcons will make it 2 big wins against the NFC South in a row. I just really don't. Despite the Panthers allowing 17 rushing touchdowns this season, I do think that could be a part of the Falcons' game plan to run the ball a little bit more on this Panthers defense. But the Falcons, they don't have a good defense either. I mean, sure, they had that good game against New Orleans, but every single team is going to surprisingly have a good game at some point, either defensively or offensively. It's just going to happen in the NFL. But I'm going to take the Carolina Panthers to win this one, because last week, they could have won last week, and they're going to actually use this as motivation, unlike what I think the Falcons are going to do, because the Falcons are going to do exactly what I think they're going to do exactly what they did in week 2 after beating the Eagles. They probably danced in the locker room, acted like they were all big and bad, and they went on this big losing streak. And guess what they probably did after beating the Saints? They probably danced in the locker room, acting like they are something, acting like they did something big, but they just won a game, and then they went on a big losing streak. And it's probably going to happen again. I am taking Carolina in this, because I don't even want to pick the Falcons anymore, because they're a constant disappointment. And I've already done a whole podcast on why there's no hope for Atlanta Falcons, so if you want to check that out, just look for it. Moving on to the New Orleans Saints and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Saints, they did look pitiful last week, but they also looked pitiful against the Rams in week 2, and the Rams, they look like a weakened team right now. And guess what happened after the Saints had that weak performance week 2? They started going on a winning streak. And guess what I think is going to start this week? They're going to start a winning streak right back up. I do think New Orleans will have to earn this one, though, because Tampa Bay, they have made some teams this season really earn their victories. And I think it's going to happen again. I think the Saints escaped Tampa Bay with a 3-point victory, game-winning field goal from Will Lutz with about 8 seconds left. They'll escape there. Next, the Denver Broncos and the Minnesota Vikings. Kirk Cousins has surprisingly improved this season. He had a great performance Sunday night against the Cowboys. And the Broncos, they are not as bad of a team as their record shows. They could have about maybe 2 or 3 more wins to their win total this season if maybe the last drives would have gone their way. But the Vikings at home coming off a big victory. This is a tough one for me. I'm going to pick the Vikings in this, but I think it's going to be very close. I think it's going to be a game where they are a little bit hungover off of a victory, but I think they're going to survive. I think the Vikings will do just enough in this game to survive in this. The Vikings win 21-17. I think it's going to be a game where the Broncos are going to be in it from start to finish. Despite having to move to Brandon Allen at quarterback, I think the Broncos will keep this close. Next, we have the Arizona Cardinals and San Francisco 49ers. 49ers are off their first loss of the 2019 season in overtime. Well, just a few weeks ago on Halloween night, the Cardinals, they found themselves down big in the game, but they're able to draw within 3 points. And Garoppolo had to step up because the defense, they didn't have the best game. But I think with the 49ers coming off their first loss, I think it's going to add fuel to their fire. I think they get back on the winning track this week. They recover from Monday night's loss and get the win over Arizona. Next, we have the New England Patriots and Philadelphia Eagles. And this is what I feel like a simple pick. I think it's pretty simple. You got to just look at history. The Patriots, they play flat one game. Next week, they completely dominate their opponent. Despite this being a road game, I think this is going to happen again. I think the Patriots, they're going to get a win this week against Philadelphia. I think they're going to look pretty dominant in this one, because once that calendar hits to November, December, we see the Patriots at their best. History just repeats itself. Let's go with New England here. Next, we have the Cincinnati Bengals and Oakland Raiders. This is another simple pick as well. The Bengals, they have a very commanding lead in the first pick in the NFL draft race, and I think they're going to continue. I do think the Bengals will get at least one win this season, but it is not going to be this week. I'm going to take the Oakland Raiders in this one, and it is not even going to be close. Next, we have the Chicago Bears and the Los Angeles Rams. Sunday Night Football. Both these teams, they just look pitiful to watch on offense. At least last week they did. But with the Rams, they just need to play the Falcons early in the season to kind of get some wins under their belt. And for the Bears, well, their defense is being wasted by a pitiful offense. And the way I see this game, it's going to be a battle of the pitiful offenses. Because I think both defenses will be able to hold their own. But I think this will be a very, very low scoring game. By a final score of 13-10, I'm going with the Los Angeles Rams. I just think the Rams offense will make a play late in the game that the Bears offense won't be able to. Because we have seen the Bears fail to perform on offense all throughout this season. I expect some changes at the quarterback position for the Bears in the 2020 NFL Draft. And finally, Monday Night Football, the Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Chargers. Chargers trying to come off a heartbreaker in Thursday Night Football last week, while the Chiefs, they're trying to come off a heartbreaker against the Titans last week, where they had the lead late in the game, but they blew it. Seems like the last two times the Chiefs and Titans played each other, the Chiefs looked like they had the game wrapped, and then they blew it at the end. But I think with Pat Mahomes being back in this offense, now that he's had a game to get back into it, I think the Chiefs, we're going to see that offense that we're used to seeing. I think Pat Mahomes will dominate this game, and I'm going to go with the Chiefs. Despite me thinking the Chargers, they do get some momentum at points in the season, I feel like this is the worst time to try to recover from a heartbreaking loss. That's why I felt like the Chargers, they had to win that game last Thursday night. So I'm going to pick the Chiefs in this one. So those are my picks for Week 11. For review, I like the Steelers, Jets, Colts, Bills, Cowboys, Ravens, Panthers, Saints, Vikings, 49ers, Patriots, Bengals, Rams, and Chiefs this week. Like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you next time.